and welcome to our video about complements. A complement is a word that completes the meaning of a basic subject and verb sentence. For example, the sentence, Maria drew. Now that is a complete sentence. It has a subject and it has a verb, but it doesn't feel complete. It doesn't feel like it expresses a complete thought. There are four types of complements. The first types you may have heard of before, a direct object and an indirect object. Now these two types of complements will always come after an action verb, and the next two types of complements will always come after a linking verb. So for direct objects, a direct object is always a noun or a pronoun, and it receives the action of the verb. So in our basic sentence, Maria drew, well, what did Maria draw? What received the action of drawing? Well, in this sense, we have Maria drew a cartoon, and that's what she actually drew. That's what basically received the action of her drawing. A good way to think about this when you're trying to find a direct object in a sentence is, who or what is doing the action? Maria is doing the action. What is Maria doing? She's drawing. What is she drawing? She's drawing a cartoon. Cartoon is your direct object. Now our second type of complement that follows an action verb is an indirect object. Now in order to have an indirect object, you have to have a direct object, because an indirect object is also a noun or a pronoun, and it receives the direct object. Okay? So you can't have something that receives a direct object if there's no direct object. But it's not the same way the other way. You don't have to have an indirect object just because you have a direct object. But if you have an indirect object, you can only have that if there is a direct object for it to receive. So in this sentence, Maria drew Tony a cartoon. Let's go through that same thing. Who or what is doing the action? Maria is doing the action. What is Maria doing? Well, she drew. What did she draw? She drew a cartoon. Now, who did she draw a cartoon for? She drew a cartoon for Tony. So Maria drew Tony a cartoon. You'll notice in this sentence that the indirect object usually comes before the direct object. That's almost always the case. Okay. Our next two types of complements will always come after linking verbs, and they are predicate nominatives and predicate adjectives. Now in our textbook, it splits up predicate nominatives into predicate nouns or predicate pronouns. But for our purposes, it's enough to know that predicate nominative will be either a noun or a pronoun. Okay? And it will always come after a linking verb, and it either identifies or renames the subject in a sentence. Now in that way, it kind of sounds like an appositive, but an appositive will come right after the noun, and there will be no verb between there. But in our case of the predicate nominatives, they will come always after a linking verb. So for example, that is my favorite show. Well, that is the subject of the sentence, but it's kind of unclear as to what that is. So in this sentence, that is my favorite show, show renames or identifies what that is. So that is our predicate nominative, predicate noun. And for a predicate adjective, it does basically the same thing. It comes after a linking verb, but this time it is an adjective. And instead of renaming the subject, it describes the subject in a way that a normal adjective does. So that show is too long. Okay, long is describing the show. Long comes after a linking verb. So it is a predicate adjective. So let's practice a couple of sentences. Okay? And basically that's all that's in this Greenbelt video is predicate nominatives, predicate adjectives, direct and indirect objects. As a child, Bill loved Legos. As a child is just an introductory phrase. And our subject is Bill. Bill's doing the action. What is Bill doing? He's loving. What is he loving? Legos. Legos is our direct object. Crownover gave the Panthers a sound beating. Let's go through it. Who's doing the action in the sentence? Crownover is. What is Crownover doing? Crownover gave. What did Crownover give? They gave a beating. Beating is our direct object. Now, who received the beating? That's the Panthers. That makes Panthers the indirect object. In the next sentence, during the 1980s, video games were a new wonder. During the 1980s is an introductory prepositional phrase, and our subject is games. Video is just describing the games. So video games were, that's our linking verb, and then they were a new wonder. Wonder is describing or giving more information, renaming the games, so that's our predicate nominative. In our last sentence, my English teacher is awesome, which is totally true, by the way. Teacher is our subject, is a linking verb, and then awesome is an adjective that's describing it, so that makes that our predicate adjective. Good luck.